Welcome to MK True Crime. I'm Jonna Spilbor. I'm a criminal defense attorney and founding member of Jonna Spilbor Law. Here's what's on the docket today. New disturbing information is coming out about Dr. Michael McKee, alleged killer of Monique and Spencer Tepe. We'll bring you the latest. Actor and director Timothy Busfield is maintaining his innocence after being officially charged with 2 counts of criminal sexual contact of a minor and 1 count of child abuse. And Joseph Scott Morgan, professor, death investigator, and host of the podcast Body Bags, joins us to discuss the latest in the Gilgo Beach serial killer case and the gravedigger from Pennsylvania, who was charged with a whopping 100 counts each of abuse of a corpse and more. I'm joined today by co-host Arthur Aidala, New York trial attorney and fedora fiend. Arthur, we have to start with updates in the Tepe case. You're familiar, correct?
Yes. If you read the New York Post, it's like the second story. It's like, we're invading Venezuela and we're bombing Iran. And then there's this case.
And then there's that, right. And then there's you. You're usually somewhere in the New York Post.
I mean, it usually has to do with fashion. But, the case like this makes you think. And John, and we've both been doing this for a while. Like, can the human brain just kind of break? Look, it's no secret. I've been through a divorce. There's an enormous amount of emotion, especially when there's little children involved, etc. But never once, and financial ruin, by the way, but never once did I ever think about killing anybody, not even myself, let alone another human being. And here, as this evidence unfolds, and we're not talking about a guy who's, a rough and tumble dude. We're talking the guy went to high school, college, medical school, like a surgeon. He's not like, putting Band-Aids on people's knees. Like, he's doing serious medical, cerebral, intellectual work. And yet you lose your mind to the point where you're executing people, you're retaining the murder weapons. It's like what happens? Does the brain, is it, it's a complicated organ. The chemicals just go crazy? Like, did you ride your bicycle and fall and break your head? I mean, this is a guy who was a law-abiding citizen. No, but John, unlike some of the clients we represent who grew up in the gutters, who had no parents, whose mother died when they were 10 years old and they were raised in the subways. Okay, there's a reason why they are the way they are. This isn't that way. This is a guy who followed the rules, followed the norms of life until he gets divorced, and the way the evidence is looking, does something horrendous, horrific, and that something he probably deserves to stay in jail for the rest of his life.
But Hang on, because there's more here than meets the eye, because there are a couple things that strike me. Number one, so first of all, Mr. Dr. McKee was married to Monique Tepe 7 years ago for about 5 minutes. They literally had a very short-term marriage. So my first question is, why on earth would this man, if he's guilty, be harboring some sort of torch, some sort of murderous torch for an ex-wife that he didn't really have a very long relationship with and has had a half a lifetime? I'm exaggerating, but since the divorce, like, what was going on? So I want to know if they maintained any sort of relationship or friendship or something between the divorce and the murder. And I do also want to go on record, and we're going to go to Assad. I predicted that this murder had something to do with a love triangle.
Credit must be given.
You don't have to pat me on the back, but let's just
credit must be given. You blurted this out a while ago.
What the hell happened here?
Okay.
Final answer. This is it. And then we're going to compare the tape and we'll see.
All right. Here's what could have happened.
When we find out, we're going to hear what you have to say. What's your prediction?
This is my total supposition, no additional facts. Just have to make it up, pull it out of thin air.
Let's go.
There had to be some sort of love triangle.
Oh.
With the 3 of them, the husband, the wife, and another person who got upset, very upset with the husband. That's why there are more bullet holes in the husband than in the wife. Couldn't leave any witnesses, shoot the wife, don't want to harm the kids. How'd I go? That's it.
So my first question that's burning in my mind, when do you decide you're wearing the glasses or you're not wearing the glasses when we do the segments together? I'm just curious.
Okay,
Like, what is
okay.
the decisive thing?
When I have to read, I need the extra eyes. And that show that we just watched, the Salt, where I basically correctly predicted what happened here.
Well, we don't know. Hold on. Whoa.
No, I kind of did. I did.
Wait, do we know there's a love triangle? I mean, I guess you can
Well,
assume so because he killed the new husband as well. But I'm not speaking from authority, but I haven't read anything where we know for a fact that there was a love triangle.
It is a
except
little, it
the
is a little early.
circumstantial evidence that he killed the guy as well.
Arthur, here's the other fact that I want you to chew on. So this guy is a doctor, right? Dr. McKee. He's a doctor. You know, and I know, lawyers, right? Lawyers, doctors. In order to become a lawyer or a doctor, you have to pass a character and fitness evaluation. You don't just go to law school or medical school, pop out, and you can, right? They have to make sure that you're not an asshole of the highest regard. Well,
I don't know. Yeah. No, that's not accurate.
They have to make sure you're not nuts.
Because there are a lot of lawyers who fit the bill that you just said.
That is
They have
true.
to make sure you don't have a criminal record. They have to make sure you're not struggling with alcoholism. They have to make sure you have
financial problems.
My partner, Judge Cammons, represents individuals for their character and fitness. Often a lot of kids who passed the bar, but they got arrested in college for something.
Yep.
They're going to have a little struggle. So Judge Cammons goes in and saves the day for them.
See, very noble.
That's the commercial for the law firm right there.
So, but he had to do the same thing. Now, at first blush, when this case broke, he didn't have any criminal history, although now it's coming out that he was a bit abusive to his former wife, now victim. But very recently, September 2025, apparently he is a defendant in a medical malpractice suit, which might have contributed to him going a little insane, not legally insane, just going mad, really, literally, perhaps. And here's another funny tip. Not funny, funny, I didn't know this. He was practicing in Nevada. That's where the medical malpractice suit is. You don't have to have medical malpractice insurance as a doctor in Nevada. But how does that make any sense? Why would anybody ever go under the knife in Nevada if there's no way to get recompensed if something goes wrong?
There's a couple things here. I believe the deceased, Monique, told her brother-in-law that the surgeon here had threatened her in the past. So there's a little bit of the history of his violence. I mean, you and I both know a lot of doctors. I know a lot of doctors who've gotten sued. They all get sued. Right. They're covered by the insurance company. It's not like someone's going to take their house away or take their yacht away if they lose the lawsuit. So I don't know, John. I don't know if that rises to the level. I mean, what he did is he left something like 8 inches in a guy's leg, which sounds like unbelievable to me. I mean, it's not like it's like one of those tiny little sponges. It's like it was a piece of plastic or something, a catheter. I don't know if that's enough to make. I mean, think about it, John. Think about it. We're both professionals.
Yeah.
To go and get a gun and then look at someone who at one point was your lover. So at one point you stood in front of some ceremonial people and said, I do, and I for forever till death do us part.
Paid for a big 5-hour party.
Blow them away, and then blow away their new lover. I mean, that's, you can't even go hunting and kill like a rabbit. Okay. I have rabbits on my property in Long Island, and I'm like, I got these little sound machines that if they cross it, it triggers something, and it's got some high pitched thing that we can't hear, but the rabbit hears it and it runs away. Because I'm like, no, I don't want to put a trap and kill the rabbit. Think about what your mind's got to be to hold that gun in your hand and look at someone and bang and blow their head off. It's like, wow, you've got to be in a whole different universe to do that.
No, I agree on that. But we got to figure out how this man got into her house without any evidence of a break-in. How does that happen? I mean, I can speculate. So I can speculate and tell you, If you still have a relationship and you invite them over for dinner and somebody knows, or they ever watched, I don't know, watched your house or something, how did he manage to do that without any evidence of a break-in? What prompted him to get in his car in the middle of the night and drive across state lines to do this? I think we are missing something, is all
We
I'm
are.
trying to say.
Well, it's one of two things. Number one, you were totally right when you spoke with Mark Eiglosh and you said this is a love triangle. And you would assume shortly between text messages, emails, and private
That'll
messaging,
come
direct
out.
messaging, something along those lines, or other witnesses, that's going to come out. And, the heart wants what the heart wants. And that's why there's heat of passion murder defense, where a murder charge will get somewhat lowered if you're functioning under extreme emotional disturbance. So that's one part of it. I don't think being sued, even though it's a bad lawsuit, that's going to trigger someone to do what he did. I mean, the other part of it is, Jonna, you and I represent clients, and we comment on cases where people do things, and we're about to comment on a case where, like, I just don't know. The way a kid falls out of a tree and breaks his arm, I don't know if your chemicals in your body aren't functioning properly, and your brain, you just start seeing things or hearing things, and you're just no longer rational. And if someone doesn't pick up on that, and if someone doesn't address that, somebody dies, or here 2 people die.
But let me, and I know we have some other juicy cases to talk about, but a road trip in the middle of the night is a long time to rethink your decision to off 2 people. If it's a heat of passion, rule of provocation, like that's a long time to be like, yeah, let me turn this car around, which is why they elevated to premeditated. One of the reasons probably why they elevated to premeditated, but we're going to find out more. And you're right. The text messages are going to be the next thing, and other phone pings. Where was he? Maybe he had been in her vicinity prior times leading up to this. So that'll all come. That'll be next. They're working on it as we speak, I'm sure.
These cases, like right now, the biggest change, folks, that you understand in the world of criminal law is technology. It has to do with the phones and our methods of communication. And back in the day, when I was in the district attorney's office in the early to mid 90s, everything was basically on paper. And now almost nothing is on paper.
Right.
All the police reports and everything. But what it changes is there's such a plethora of material to go through. Back in the day, all they were looking for was like handwritten notes somewhere, love letters, postcards, fingerprints. And now it's like, okay, let's download this telephone that's got a terabyte of information. And you got to go through the birthday card to Aunt Molly. You got to go through the absentee note to the kid's teacher to find it literally is, folks, looking for a needle in a haystack a lot of the times. And I will tell you, I was in a proffer recently. That's when you bring the defendant in to speak to the prosecutor. And they had executed a search warrant on his house. And he had so many devices in there. And they said to him, look, if you really want us to cooperate, if you really want to cooperate with us and you want to look good to us, of those 15 devices that we found, why don't you just tell us which ones are relevant and which ones have been around forever and absolutely irrelevant? I will tell you right now, within hand's reach, I think I have 4 telephones right here. I think I have a Palm Pilot in my desk drawer from back in the day.
Palm Pilot.
I have a BlackBerry. Well, don't forget, it went from Palm Pilot to BlackBerry to iPhone. I got all of them right here. If God forbid they came in and do the search warrant, they don't want to go through all of this stuff, because even on that Palm Pilot, there's a ton of information. So what they're doing now is they're going through everything and finding what is the communication? Where's his mindset? Did he Google how to kill someone? Did he Google how to break into a house without, or ask ChatGPT, how do I break into my ex-wife's house without anybody knowing? So, these investigations go on and on. However, even with a great defense attorney like Jonna Spilbor, I think my man, the surgeon's days of wielding a scalpel are over.
Yeah, he's going to probably be wielding a shank.
It was very Jonna-esque of me, because that's like something you would say. I think his days of wielding a scalpel are over. I'm Jonna Spilbor, reporting live for McKee True Crime.
I just want to add one other quick thing, because I hope neither one of us ever gets investigated, because of the work we do with representing clients and doing this kind of commentary. My Google history makes me look like a serial killer
Absolutely.
from the stuff that we have to
No,
research.
no, you are absolutely correct, because there are
Mhm.
things I will tell you. I sometimes I don't look them up for the reason you just said.
For that reason?
Yeah, like I don't really want to look up like how to kill somebody, even though it's been like evidence in some of my cases. Like I'm not putting that in my computer. I'll go to the New York Public Library 3 blocks from here and do it on some public computer. I'm not doing that here
Sense.
because of what you just said.
I think about it every time. Every time. But it's okay, because if the feds ever come looking for me, cops ever come looking for me, I'm calling you.
It's open enrollment time, the time when some health insurance companies hope you will blindly sign up for overpriced premiums and confusing fine print. Don't fall for it. Consider taking control of your healthcare with Crowd Health, the alternative for people who make their own decisions. Crowd Health is a community where members fund each other's medical bills directly, no middlemen, no networks, no nonsense. For under $100 a month, you get access to bill negotiators, low-cost prescriptions, lab testing tools, and a database of vetted doctors. If something major happens, you pay the first $500, and then the crowd steps in to help with the rest. And with ACA subsidies expiring, prices could be going up, and Crowd Health members have already saved over $40 million by refusing to overpay. This open enrollment, take your power back. Consider joining Crowd Health to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using the code MKTrueCrime at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code MKTrueCrime. Crowd Health is not insurance. They say opt out. Take your power back.
Speaking of cops looking for people, we're gonna shift gears now and talk about this is a good one, because it's one of these cases, Arthur, and you're gonna relate. Like, we've got Timothy Busfield. I remember him from years ago. What was it called? 30-something.
30-something.
Right, but he's done stuff since then. I mean,
I don't have to read, right? I can take off my glasses.
I have followed his career. He's married to Melissa Gilbert. She's famous too. Well, out of the blue-ish, a couple of kids that he worked with on one of his shows have accused him of sexual misconduct, for lack of a better word. And he knew about it. He took his sweet time turning himself in to New Mexico. He actually has a place, apparently, in the Catskills, which is hop, skip, and a jump for me, not all that far from you either. But he finally turned himself in. And guess what? This judge locked him up pending the next hearing. So I want to talk about this case because it's one of these cases, Arthur, you know, and we've seen it in our career too. Once somebody makes this kind of allegation against you, and celebrities are frequent targets. I'm not saying these allegations are false by any stretch. We don't know enough yet. But once these allegations are made, your life is forever changed, even if they are not proven, even if. So this guy is saying, look, I didn't do anything. The mother is mad and she wants to exact revenge because I didn't re-up the contract with the kids, or words to that effect, fired them from the show. What do you make of the allegations thus far at this early stage?
Oh, let me just start where you were a minute ago, which is once these accusations are made, like your life is forever altered, right? So
yes.
Literally, when I represented Lawrence Taylor, the New York Giant great, and the Giants are very happy they got a new head coach. They're very excited about that today. Lawrence Taylor, just for those of you who don't know, because he hasn't played in 30 years, the NFL just ranked him the greatest defensive football player of all time. And he was booked for rape. It was the cover. His mugshot that we just saw of Timothy, Lawrence's was the cover of the Daily News. When he got a misdemeanor and community service, they realized the young lady was not telling the truth, and we just wanted to get rid of it. It was like on page 38 between the PC Richards ads and like the obituaries or something like that. So it's very, very hard, to your point, to shed that. Dershowitz wrote a book, Built by Accusation. Just the mere being accused of something like this. And Dershowitz, it wasn't an underage person. It wasn't a pedophile. This, we're talking about young boys. We're talking about pedophilia here. Now, they're talking about inappropriate touching. I don't think there's any nudity, thank God, involved here. But listen, there's a lot to unravel here. First and foremost, Jonna, I don't know if you've ever been in a position, you probably have, where on a Thursday or Friday, you know that they're looking for your client, And you know, if you surrender him, he's spending the weekend in jail.
Right.
And what I've done, and I'm sure you've done the same, is I call law enforcement and or the prosecutor if there's an assigned assistant DA or U.S. attorney. I say, look, calm down. You know who I am. We'll be there Monday morning, 7:00. He won't have shoelaces on. He won't have a belt. He'll just have his ID and he'll be surrendering. We don't know if that happened here with Timothy. They're making it sound like, he was in the wind. He says on his little video that, I had to hire a lawyer and I had to drive 2,000 miles to get there because if I got on a plane, they would have arrested me in the airport, which definitely makes sense. So, but the thing that I want to hear what Jonna Spilbor has to say is, number one, that he made a video, and I would like to hear your thoughts on the substance of the video. Number two, that he released it, of all places, to TMZ. So, Jonna, I'm going to sit back and be educated by you.
So, well, first, and I don't know, this might be the same video. Let's watch SOT 3 so we can hear from his mouth what he said, at least at one point in this process.
Hi, everybody. It's Tim. I'm sure most of you know that are watching this that I was ordered to come to Albuquerque. I'm here now. I got the call Friday night. I had to get a lawyer. Saturday, I got in a car and drove 2,000 miles to Albuquerque. I'm going to confront these lies. They're horrible. They're all lies. And I did not do anything to those little boys. And I'm going to fight it. I'm going to fight it with a great team. And I'm going to be exonerated. I know I am, because this is all so wrong and all lies. So hang in there. And hopefully I'm out real soon and back to work. And I love everybody for supporting me. Thank you.
So what do you think, Jonna? Would you allow your client to do that?
I was going to ask you the same thing.
Or
Probably in this case, the attorneys, whoever is representing him, probably couldn't stop him from doing that. I know we don't want our clients really ever to make statements, but when it comes to sex abuse and you're a celebrity, that's a little bit of a tougher call. And I think you have to maintain your innocence. This video, so I have a difference of opinion. There is some expert, Megan actually talked to an expert who said he has detected deception from this video. When I look at it, I always look to the eyes. Like there's something, what some profiler once said, if you look up and to the left or up and to the right, you're lying. And he's kind of not doing that. And he seems pretty, I don't know, steady Eddie. So look, these are tough charges. We were talking off air. It's a lot harder to prove a negative. It's a lot harder to prove something didn't happen than to prove something did. And when you're in this type of defendant posture, you really are trying to prove something didn't happen, even though, the whole innocence, proven guilty, forget that for a minute. So I think that this was a non-harmful way for him to make a statement, to let the public know that he's going to be fighting these charges without sticking his foot in his mouth. That's how I feel about this brief statement. And I have some other opinions, but I want to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think he's probably going to lose. I agree. It doesn't hurt him legally, right? But there's going to be people out there that, he's full of it, and what traditionally, if you're going to do something like that, you would do a written statement, right? 4 sentences,
Have your lawyer say it for you.
Yeah. Either have your lawyer say it for you, like that's what I did with Lawrence Taylor, or, you just put out a 4-sentence statement and just say, these are horrible accusations. Not only didn't I do it, I would never think of doing it. I would never dream of doing. Someone who ever wanted to do that is a sick individual. I'm not a sick individual. And there's millions of people who I've interacted with through the course of my life that will attest to that these accusations are insane. I did do it. They were about to charge somebody here in New York, and I knew the charges were coming down the next day. And I did a preemptive press conference. I wanted to get the narrative out before the media did and the DA's office did. So it was one of the few times the defense attorney had a press conference before the prosecutor. Bribery case, city government, very, very different than these charges. We have 2 twin boys who are, extremely sympathetic. But Johnny, the uphill battle it is when you are fighting these types of charges. He'd be better off saying he robbed a bank, right? Or he extorted, people out of money then these charges that he's on the set, and the parents who were watching their kids on an iPad, the iPad went dark. They couldn't see what was going on. And, he started off by just tickling them, and then it went further and further. And you have experts saying that they've interviewed the kids, and the one main complainant is suffering from PTSD. And, these are big hurdles to have to climb.
And we also know, because, and we've seen this movie before, when you are I'm not saying the allegations are false. We just don't know yet. But historically, when celebrities are targeted, sometimes what ends up happening is the plaintiffs want to get a quick payoff. They expect somebody to write a check, and maybe these charges will go away. And I get that. I think more and more in these days, since the Me Too movement, people are less inclined to pay their way out of a false allegation, even when it is false. And one other thing that strikes me about this case, and I want you to remember this when we discuss it in the future. To me, there's something a little bit askew about, he's got two little boys that are making these allegations, but then out of the woodwork comes a teenage, I think it was a 16-year-old girl at the time, is now also making allegations. And to me, that, one of these things is not like the other. If you're a child molester, what was his name? Sandusky, for example, right? Boys. If Timothy Busfield is a serial child molester, you usually, girls, teenage girls are different from young boys. I'm not saying that he would stick with one over the other, but to me, it's a little bit odd that this girl is coming out of the woodwork as well. So for what it's worth, I do think it's a little strange in that sense.
It's early yet. I mean, the bottom line is it's early yet.
Very, very early. So
moving right along.
We're going to move right along. I mean, keep your eye on this new sex abuse claim, because like I said, it's not from a young boy.
One last question to Jonna Spilbor. He does this video, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is TMZ the outlet you should be? TMZ has a role in our society, a very substantial role in our society, but you're talking about an insanely serious criminal case, potential devastated victims, or a potential devastated falsely accused defendant. Is TMZ where you release a video like this?
TMZ was probably the friendliest outlet. TMZ might be the only outlet that was willing to let him leave his self-serving, one-sided statement, perhaps, right?
Point.
Maybe the other networks weren't willing to do that.
Good. No, that is a fair point. Look, folks, when you're up against these kinds of charges, like Professor Alan Dershowitz was, and I've been on that saga with him for almost 12 years now, until Virginia Giuffre finally admitted that she was, I may have made a mistake when I said Alan Dershowitz and I had sex 6 times in 6 different places. I mean, the 2 outlets we went to were the New York Times and some woman, no one knows her name is Megyn Kelly. Those were the 2 places. I mean, right after the news broke in the New York Times, Alan went right on with Megyn and, told his side of the story, that he was exonerated, etc. So I just thought, if my client is going to do the unorthodox thing and make this statement, maybe an outlet that was more associated with hard news as opposed to celebrity gossip would be the appropriate place. But Jonna, once again, your brilliance shines through, and maybe no one else wanted to take it. Although in today's day of clicking, whoever took it would get a lot of click.
Yeah, that is true. But okay, so we're gonna.
Is it time for us to take a break?
Yeah, we're gonna switch gears yet again and take a break. What's coming up after that, Arthur?
Oh, you know what? I think that a trial date has finally going to be set for alleged Gilgo Beach serial killer Rex Heuermann. I don't know if that's how you say his name the right way. We're going to talk about that and more. And we have a special guest coming. He's a professor and he's a death investigator. Yes, folks, a death investigator. Joseph Scott Morgan, you're going to want to hear. I don't know if I've ever spoken to a death investigator before. I am sure investigator Professor Morgan is going to be spectacular. Don't go away.
A new year means new financial goals, like making sure your savings are secure and diversified. Will this be the year you decide to talk to someone from Birch Gold Group? They use an educational approach with a deep understanding of macroeconomics. There are forces pushing the dollar lower and gold higher, which is why they believe every American should own physical gold. So until July 30th, January, until January 30th. If you're a first-time gold buyer, Birch Gold is offering a rebate of up to $10,000 on qualifying purchases. To claim eligibility and start the process, you just text MK to the number 989898. Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you are still eligible for a rebate of up to 10 grand. Consider making right now your first time to buy gold and take advantage of a rebate up to $10,000 when you buy before January 30th. Text MK to the number 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Again, text MK to 989898.
Welcome back to MK True Crime. Rex Heuermann was in court this week where a judge finally set a date for his trial later this year, quote, come hell or high water. That's a direct quote from the judge. Joseph Scott Morgan, professor, death investigator, I love, that's sexy, and host of the Body Bags podcast, joins us to discuss the very latest. Welcome, Joseph.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. Yeah.
Arthur and I are very familiar with you. You're everywhere blood and guts are sold. We will find you and your amazing.
I love the
commentary.
title, death investigator,
Yeah,
not
I like
forensic,
that too.
not a forensic guy. Going with right to the chase, so people have
There you go.
absolutely no confusion about what you do. You investigate death.
That is it. Yeah.
The Rex Heuermann case, just to remind people, Rex Heuermann is, I think he's charged with seven murders at this time, old murders, all between 1990 and 2010, of a bunch of women who were left on the side of the road in the Gilgo Beach area, got caught because of a piece of pizza crust. So to me, and I'm not a death investigator, this might be a defensible case because we have to really look at the science and the forensics. That's your area of expertise. How do you look at the evidence thus far from what you know?
Well, first, thanks for having me, guys. But first off, we have to think about this idea of the abandonment of evidence, and you guys are well versed in this area. If you leave something behind, it's it's open. It's open for anybody that wants to go and collect it, and that's essentially what's happened here. But let's talk about the transfer of the evidence. Saliva is DNA rich. All right. So let's just say if we're talking about a straw, which there's been several cases out there involving straws where people have discarded these in the trash. But particularly when you think about making contact with your mouth, people don't think about the process of eating and what you're leaving behind. So you bite in to a slice, all right? And that remnant of that saliva is actually going to attach itself to that pizza crust, all right? And this is it's an evidence-rich environment at this point in time. So contained within the saliva is going to be your DNA, all right? Your map, your biological map will be contained, and it is very much unique, and it is unique to you. Now, the fact that he has abandoned this and left it in the trash and it has been recovered, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but we're going to go after that in my field in forensics, and we're going to examine it and take it out to the nth degree to see what we can find. And apparently they have recovered DNA there.
Joseph, I was going to ask you, and then we just saw that interesting picture. I'm thinking, all right, you suck on a straw, you eat a piece of pizza, it goes in the trash. The trash contaminates that sample. I mean, and I would imagine a defense attorney in this case would try to make hay with that. I know they're also making hay on the fact that, there was an expectation of privacy in his pizza crust, but I would have to push back and say, no, there wasn't, as you correctly pointed out. You throw something in the trash, fair game. We know that under the Fourth Amendment. But why wouldn't it being discarded or open to an element or what have you contaminate that particular piece of DNA?
Well, I think first off, is it boxed? Okay, I think that would be a big question. Or is it wrapped in something as it's disregarded or discarded? Or did he just merely take a crust from a slice and just, kind of toss it in there? I think one of the more important things. And we have to think about this very broadly, and it's an honest question. So let's just say that it's in a box, all right?
Mhm.
Well, you wouldn't just test that bit of crust that is in there. You would go through and sample all of the surfaces of that box to see who else's DNA may have transferred there. Now, it'll be different status, right? It could be touch DNA, it could be saliva. I don't know. There are opportunities, I guess, where people could drop hair into there and those sorts of things. But you want to source each one of those profiles, and you need to make that available to everybody. You know, who else's DNA was found here? That's only fair. As a scientist, I want to know that. All right. I'm not coming down either on the prosecution side or the defense's side here. I just want to know the scientific truth and know what waters I'm swimming in. Now, here's the big question. If his DNA is there, all right, on that slice, that discarded slice, and you have DNA that marries up to his profile that's associated with all these other cases,
Right.
we can only present the mathematical conclusions here, the odds. It's up to the prosecution and the defense to argue that point. Okay.
Mhm. Juries love that, though. They
Well,
love DNA evidence.
Yeah. Yeah,
well,
they do.
They love the conclusion of it. No disrespect to I'm sure the professor makes it interesting, but folks should understand in the courtroom, explaining to the jury what DNA is and how it works is
Yeah.
not exactly riveting. Am
No.
I correct on that one?
No,
Professor?
no. Look, hey, look, guys, the only thing you got to do is look back to O.J. Simpson. You talk about a snoozer. Remember, Barry Scheck, famously,
Scheck.
Oh, yeah.
he became the the DNA
guru.
the DNA guru, lawyer, Innocence Project, all that stuff that came along with that. But talk about a snoozer. You get a graduate degree in forensic science. If DNA is not necessarily what you're interested in forensics, trust me, I'll even say this, and I'm a college professor. It's a snoozer. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is. It's not something that's like, oh, gee whiz, let's go study DNA today. You have to be
prosecutors
vested.
the prosecutors who I've spoken to and lectured to,
Yeah.
who are the ones who have to introduce the DNA.
Yeah.
I just say, KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
You have to.
They don't need to know the history. All they need
No.
to know is, hey, I'm an expert in DNA because as the professor went to this school, that school, this master's, etc. I
Yeah.
know what DNA is. And the one that I found on the pizza, it matches the one on this guy, and that matches the one on this girl and that girl and the other girl. And as tightly as you could do that, you do it. And as the defense attorney, you bring up the points that John just brought up. Well, hold on a second, Professor. This is a piece of pizza found in a garbage pail, and aren't there rats in that part of the day? And there's squirrels and there's raccoons. And let's look at the DNA found on the deceased and how that was contaminated and how long ago was that? And
Right.
and so you just try to make a big soup out of it all and have the jurors walking away being like, I'm not sure what really happened right there.
This case rises and falls, though, on the forensics because of the age of the murders. Without it, forget for a minute that the jury might get to contemplate that. What the defense is really trying to do is keep it out, because unlike most cases, if they successfully kept out this
They're
type
done.
of forensic evidence, there's no case left.
Right. They're done.
Yeah, you're right. And that's kind of the baseline that they return to. I'm reflecting back. I don't know, maybe you guys can remind me, it's a couple of months ago, the defense attorney made a presentation, and I remember we all had a laugh over this. He was saying they're using untested DNA principles here. It's almost like he was saying they went into a cave and they discovered fire. And what he's talking about is nuclear DNA. And nuclear DNA sourcing and research has been done for years and years in the medical field. Here's the thing about it is a lot of people, and again, this is more of an attorney's bailiwick, but forensically too, for whatever reason, New York has never become a Daubert state. It's still a Fry state, all right? And when you think about that measurement of evidence, the feet are not really
just
held
explain to the listeners what
yeah.
the
So
two
with
things
Fry,
Fry
Fry is a very broad understanding of science. Okay. And it's like, well, the judges are like, well, yeah, I mean, it sounds good to me. We'll let it in. Daubert, you have to pass through a crucible in order to get certain bits of evidence, scientific evidence, admitted. Okay. And so there has to be ongoing testing. People have to agree on it. It has to be peer reviewed, all these sorts of things. And that's generally kind of the basis of Fry versus Daubert. Fry has been around since, I don't know, since the early 1900s. And it's
Right.
still the standard.
So,
And you
right.
have also Fry plus states as well. But Daubert is kind of the gold standard. And still to this day, New York doesn't have it, which is kind of interesting considering they consider themselves so legally progressive, and this has not happened up to this point.
You know, those New York lawyers, they consider themselves this and they consider
Yeah.
themselves that, but come on, they're a bunch of losers. Let's face
Dime,
it.
Oh.
dime a dozen. I want your opinion on something. This is a little bit
Yeah.
off script, but this is has bothered me since the Brian Kohberger case. When that first broke and we were talking about genetic genealogy before the case got even stronger than it did at the time he ultimately took his plea, although didn't admit anything. I said to myself, genetic genealogy, nah, jurors aren't going to buy that. It's too far removed, but I think I'm wrong. What's your take on genetic genealogy?
Well, okay, first off, as a scientist, I'm fascinated by it. All right. Absolutely fascinated. I think that, and I look, shameless plug here. I point to my friends at Othram Laboratories and think about what they're doing with what's referred to as the NamUs list, which is a list of all of the unidentified bodies across the country. Okay. Just imagine this. And what David Middleman, who is president of Othram, who actually plays into the Kohberger case, his goal is to start striking names off of that list, getting these long since dead people identified, and that's through forensic genetic genealogy. Well, you begin to build out this family tree. His laboratory, he doesn't just employ scientists, he's got genealogists that are there too. But these are open source locations that they're going to. Supposedly, I think the FBI got into a little bit of an issue relative to what their internal memorandum had talked about in regards to the Kohberger case, because they said that they would not reference these close sources. It's indicated that they may have. But that aside, it's really fascinating. Now, as a private citizen, I'm not a real big fan of these sites where you just free will give over your DNA. Because I think that it can be used.
Are you talking about like ancestrystock.com, that kind of stuff?
23andMe.
Yeah. And I'm just not a fan. And, you guys might know more about it than me. I think, I don't know, 23andMe, I think has been bought out by somebody now. And 23andMe said, yeah, we got all the safeguards in place. Your data is secure. Well, what about the next guy that owns this? What's going to happen to all of that
Let me
data?
say you talk about along the same lines, because I was just going on an app the other day, and they wanted to use my iris. It was a series. It was like American Express or something like that. Yeah. Am I crazy to allow American Express to get my biometrics?
I can't answer that. I think you got to do what you feel comfortable with, but can I give you one quick analysis here? There are things.
I'm in no rush.
Well, there's things that we do now in forensics that, when I started, as you can tell, I'm a real young guy. When I started, we never could have even begun to fathom the stuff that we can do now. But even like the case out of Ohio with the unfortunate dentist and his wife that were executed in their bed, that video pass of the assailant, the alleged assailant, moving behind that building. Well, biometrics is going to play into that because they can do a gait analysis on that, how that guy is walking. All right.
Wow.
They can actually plug that in. Then you start thinking about the biometrics of your face, how you can open your phone with iris, then thumb, all this other stuff. That's all biometrics. And so that's
let me just tell you why, Professor, how it's not perfect. And I'm going to get myself in trouble here. There's this very stupid policy here in New York that if you're suing Madison Square Garden or any of its affiliated places, Radio City Music Hall, the Beacon Theater, and you're a lawyer in the law firm that's suing, you're not allowed to enter any of their establishments. And two of my partners, both one at Radio City and one at Madison Square Garden, tried to enter. And sure enough, as soon as they go through the metal detectors, within 30 seconds, they're approached by security holding an iPad with their picture from walking through the metal detector and the picture of our website and say, you remember this law firm is suing here and you can't go through. Well, last year, my wife, who's a partner at the law firm, and myself decided we're going to take our son to see the Rockettes at Radio City. And I gave her a heads up. I go, look, this could be a problem, but let's give it a shot. Now,
Oh my
I'm
Lord.
kind of the face of the law firm. Somehow or another, Doc, I walked through Radio City security. My 6-year-old does, and then as my wife does, they
Oh,
surround her.
oh my
And
Lord.
oh
Oh,
yeah, it was
wow.
very interesting. My 6-year-old goes, "What's going on?" I go, "Oh, well, mommy's a lawyer, and they need to talk to her about lawyering stuff. So she's not going to be able to go to the show. Arthur, you and I are going to go together." And he goes, "Well, Dad is 6-year-old. He goes, Dad, you're a lawyer too." He goes, "You go do the lawyering and let mommy watch the show with me." But somehow or another, my point being that it's not a perfect science because they should have
No,
grabbed
it's not.
me,
Yeah.
and they didn't, and they grabbed her. And so that's why criminal defense attorneys are always challenging all of the technology, all the cell phone data, and what phone what power it pinged off of to identify somebody, and all the way down to old school paraffin tests where they used to put someone's hand
Gunshot
in
residue.
wax and
Yeah.
right the
Yeah.
residue from a gunshot, and you cannot 100% believe anything. And it all just needs to be challenged. And then look, if it survives that challenge, the jury does with it as they should or will.
Absolutely. Put the feet to the fire, as I say. But the thing about it is the more perfected it gets, the scarier it gets, right? And so, you begin to think about those considerations as well. I, I many times, as a college professor, with forensics, and I still teach at the police academy and all that sort of thing. And this is kind of a bit off topic, but I'll go ahead and go down this path with you. I've often thought, the advances that we're making in forensics, everything that we're doing, I often think, are we making our old school detectives obsolete, or are we making them lazy? The old adage about, well, we'll let the boys down at the lab solve it. Well, if you collect sample, does that knock down the enthusiasm or the drive of a detective to go out and burn shoe leather? All right, and go out and knock on doors. The assumption is that science is going to solve the problem. It will not solve the problem. And again, kind of rote, but the stuff that I provide and my colleagues provide, we're part of the big toolbox. We're something that you call on
Right.
to augment what you're doing. We're not there to necessarily bring this thing to a conclusion. That's not the utility
Sometimes,
that
but
we're.
That's a
sometimes,
great
Your
point.
Honor, it could be the nail in the coffin. So,
Yeah,
as a
oh,
prosecutor,
absolutely.
right? As a
Yeah.
prosecutor, it could be like, so Mr. Aidala wants you to think that Miss Jones is lying, Mr. Schwartz is making a mistake, and da 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 is just has a motivational lie. But you know what
Yeah.
doesn't lie? The professor, the death investigator.
The
He doesn't
science.
lie, folks, because
I
he's
try
got the
not to.
DNA, the fingerprints, and everything else you can think of, and that doesn't lie.
But hold on, I want to talk about the grave digger case, but before we do that, I kind of, in speaking about this, I figured out a way to commit the perfect murder. You want to know how?
Oh
Go
Lord,
for
I
it.
don't know.
This
I
way,
don't know if I want to be. I don't know if I want to be a party to this conversation any
okay,
longer.
well,
Hang on.
just
Do I need
Attorney-client
counsel?
privilege. Don't worry about it, Professor.
hypothetically, so here's what
Yeah.
you got to do if you're going to kill somebody,
Yeah.
and you want to lick a straw, or suck a straw, or eat a piece of pizza. You can't put it in the garbage. You got to flush it down the toilet.
Flush it down the
That's
toilet.
how you get rid
Yeah.
of the evidence. For like,
Yeah.
you could never, right? Nobody has ever gone and tried to fish out that kind of evidence. I bet.
Well, I
I don't know,
can't speak
Jonna.
to. I
Never say
can't.
never.
I can't speak to now. Talking about detectives, I've been around detectives that will not quit. Period, and they will go into the sewers. They will go into a septic tank. But to the best of my recollection, no, I haven't heard about anybody chasing DNA contaminated straws down into the toilet.
See, yeah, you just got to tip
There you
news
go.
you can use. All right, so before, but I do want to pivot because this case fascinated me. I didn't even think
Yeah,
grave robbers were a real thing, but
they
apparently
are.
they are a real thing.
Yes.
And you
Because of
talked
money.
about this grave robber case from Pennsylvania, 100 skulls and mummified body parts found in the back of a car.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
Well, this individual, there's been an individual that has been arrested out of Pennsylvania, and actually these grave robberies took place in Delaware County. If people are familiar with the greater Philly area, and just so I can I just want to frame this. Just give me a little bit of rope here. This
Mhm.
graveyard, so people understand, it's called Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah Cemetery. It's not graveyard. Graveyards are associated with churches. So this is a cemetery.
Mhm.
And this cemetery has been there, now get this, for 100, for, see, I'll just give you the number, since like 1850. All right.
Okay.
So,
A
and this
long
thing,
time.
it's a
Mhm.
very long time, and the totality of this area for this thing covers almost 160 acres. All right. Prime real estate, right? Delaware County. And it just goes on and on. Only a part of the graveyard or cemetery is still being utilized. You know, sometimes you just have to stop it. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of bodies that are
Mhm.
buried in this thing. Well, what had begun to occur is that people had been reporting that graves had either been desecrated or burglarized because they found, like with mausoleums, they found either holes knocked in the doors pried open. There's a couple of subterranean burials where you've just got kind of a slab on top of the ground, and this thing has either been knocked through or pried up. When this individual was hooked up on charges, right you are, they actually found a crowbar in his possession. He's got a rather large screwdriver. And yeah, he's got remains in the back of his car. And what one of the detectives had done is they had set up cameras because they were trying to figure out who's doing
Mhm.
this,
Right.
because it's absolutely ghastly. When they finally catch this guy literally red-handed, he's got, and this adds a bit of a creep factor to it, a burlap sack. Okay.
Mhm.
He's got this crowbar, which, as you guys know, every state has a description of burglary tools in their criminal statute. And
Right.
you look at Ted Bundy, he was hooked up on a charge relative to burglary tools. All right. That was one of the charges. So things that you can facilitate theft with, burglary. And then he's got these remains on the back seat of his car, including skulls. But what they found at his home was even more chilling because they wind up back at this guy's domicile in the basement.
Of course.
And to add another level to this, and there are row upon row upon row of skulls, individual human remains, bony remains, probably upwards of 500, I think, right now,
Oh
individual.
my
And when you
God.
say remains, that's not total intact remains. That's like elements. You can have like a femur, a humerus. You can have parts of hands. You've got mummified remains that are down there. And then you've got these skulls. This rocket scientist also had an Instagram page that was advertising this stuff, or at least demonstrating it,
Wow.
with all of these skulls. They just go on and on. And apparently there's a
Oh,
Facebook group that's associated with it too.
So,
So, yeah.
Professor, there was a very famous case
that's
in
gross.
New York. And actually, my closest friend was the main prosecutor, Josh Hanshaft. He's a judge now, but he was the lead prosecutor. It was a funeral home.
Mhm.
And the funeral home, as they were embalming the individuals, and Alistair Cook, remember him, the famous old actor, was on the
Oh,
famous
yeah.
show there. He was one of the victims. They were taking the bones out and replacing them with PVC tubes,
Hmm.
and then using the bones for dental implants and
Yep.
other type of surgical. And as horrible as that is, some of the deceased and the bones they were using were people who were very sick and they had cancer and they
Right.
had, the diseases where you should not be using those bones to put in another human being. The doctor who was involved in this, he went to prison for life, and he died in prison.
Good.
The funeral director, I'm not making this up, he apparently fell off a roof. Um, but he was the guy who, like, people were giving their loved ones to him to prepare for burial, and
Yeah.
he's cutting them open and taking out their bones and selling them, and it was a very profitable.
Yes.
And I'm assuming this gravedigger, that the finances were to some degree is what was motivating him. Although I'm curious to know whether Jonna knows him, because Jonna has a thing for motorcycles and tattoos. I don't know. Did you ever like run into this guy, Jonna, in your like walking around life? Or?
No, I don't have a thing for that. And I'm going to go on record right now, even though I have a long list of ex-boyfriends in my life. If I ever walked into one of their homes and saw a human skull I'd be out of there. You can't even have one of those, when people decorate with like old goat skulls if they think they're sort of a cowboy, and a cow
Yes,
skin rug.
yes,
No,
yes.
I'm gone.
You're
Thank
not
you
doing
very
that.
much. Nice,
Would you
nice
ever eat?
try.
Would you ever eat like lamb's heads for like as a meal,
No,
like the
I don't
Italians
eat.
did
I
in
don't
that
eat
movie
baby
Nona?
animals. No, in
Okay,
fact, thank you for that.
all
But
right.
apparently, but before we let you go, Joseph,
Yeah.
but I get so it is legal to sell some human remains for medical purposes.
Yeah.
But what he was
With the
doing is
consent, with the
way out of
yeah,
that.
but you have to have the consent of either the
Yeah.
deceased, either the individual or the family members to do that.
So then
Right.
he
And
This
was
is
probably
robbery.
easy.
let me interject one more thing. This guy did allegedly make a sale, and this is kind of a big legal issue here, I think, and why the feds are going to get involved in this. He transported a skull allegedly from Pennsylvania to, I think, Chicago, I'm sorry, and sold it there. Now that's theft of stolen property, if you will. That's interstate commerce, I think. That's kind of terrifying because where else have these samples gone? And one more thing that people are not picking up on this case. This guy, just hang on one second. This guy has robbed allegedly countless numbers of graves. Y'all, let me tell you something. Back when these people were buried, they weren't using modern embalming techniques. You know what they embalm bodies with?
Oh,
Heavy metals. So everything that he took out and put into his basement, the state level EPA is going to get involved in this. Also, his neighbors run the risk of being contaminated by this stuff. And there's also supposed to be a storage unit somewhere where he's keeping this stuff. So everybody in that storage area has the potential of being contaminated by heavy metals as well. I'm talking about things like mercury here. And so this thing is so far reaching. I think that right now we're just scratching the surface of it because there's no way under heaven that this guy's doing this by himself. I think other people are probably connected to it.
John, I think we got to cut him off, this guy, from our lives.
I'm
that's
sorry.
I don't think
That
we should be
is-
hanging out with him anymore. I'm
oh my
done.
God.
I don't know about you, but I'm done with it.
That is actually scarier to me than the notion of somebody going into a cemetery under the cover of darkness and digging up
Yeah.
old bones. Joseph Scott Morgan, you are such a rich
Treasure.
field of information.
Thanks for having
We
me.
really appreciated having you and grossing us out. Like I do like being
not my
grossed out
intention.
just a little bit from time to time. And we really appreciated having you. Thank you very much. And people can listen to your podcast too, right? Body Bags is the name of your
Body
podcast.
Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan on Apple, iHeart, or Spotify. Yeah.
Well, thanks again. And we are going to take another quick break. Next, your mailbag and our closing arguments. Remember, we want to hear from you. Email your comments and story suggestions to mktruecrime@devilmaycaremedia.com, and we will be right back.
You've watched the GLP-1 craze explode. Friends, celebrities, everyone's talking about it. And yes, the results can be impressive. But if you are looking for a safe, effective, natural alternative that's needle-free, consider Veracity. Veracity was founded by a certified hormonal health coach dedicated to creating holistic solutions for metabolic health. Their signature formula, Metabolism Ignite, is a unique blend of hibiscus extracts, green coffee bean extract, magnesium, and more. It's caffeine-free, and Veracity says clinical trials showed no negative side effects from these wholesome ingredients. They say Ignite is the #1 doctor-recommended natural GLP-1 alternative and booster. And they say it's safe for people already on GLP-1 meds, and even for new moms who are pregnant or breastfeeding. So consider GLP-1 benefits the natural way. Head to veracityhealth.co and use code Megan for up to 45% off your order. Once again, that's veracityhealth.co. You don't put in the extra M there. For up to 45% off. Promo code Megan, so they know we sent you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to MK True Crime. We'll get to our closing arguments in just a moment, but first we have a great question from Allison, and it really is a great question. I'm not just saying that. Here's the question. Is the traditional jury system still fit for the purpose in an era of 24/7 news cycles, social media, and instant access to information? Can juries realistically remain impartial and decide cases solely on the evidence presented in court? Or has the nonstop information cycle fundamentally changed how juries function? Thank you so much for all of the work you do. Looking forward to future episodes. Love, Allison. I have very strong feelings on this, but I will defer to Jonna Spilbor.
Okay, then I'm going to be quick so we can get to your very strong feelings. Allison, I want to answer your question with a little bit of a sidebar. So the answer is no. The jury system has changed so much as social media and 24/7 news and the internet have allowed it to. Here's one of the things that really bothers me, and it's connected to your question. I think now we have a bigger problem in that some jurors will attempt to get on a jury because they think they can make money later. Somebody wants to be on a jury because they can write the book, or they can, I don't know, get a big interview for which they're going to get paid. And that is easy to not reveal in voir dire, right? Once you know who the defendant is, if you think it's going to be a high ticket case, you might want to say whatever it takes to stay on that jury. That's the next big thing we need to tackle in connection with the sanctity of juries in this day and age. Arthur, I can't hear you.
Information. I was just thinking, okay, I'm collecting my thoughts. Okay, can I collect my thoughts?
You may.
Information in today's day and age is so accessible, and misinformation, that's the biggest problem. Misinformation is so accessible, and jurors, especially if you're in a high profile case, the news is everywhere. Even if people are trying not to see it, they go in the elevator and all of a sudden there's the case that you're sitting on a jury on. You go in a cab, there it is in the back. I mean, it's hard to avoid. And then there are the other jurors who intentionally see what they're saying online about it. It is a very, very difficult task to be up against. And Allison, to your point about the jury system and how it's set up, I asked a question in the first round of the Harvey Weinstein trial, I guess last year, to a young man who was maybe he was 28, 29. I said, he'd been in the courtroom maybe 2 hours. I said, when was the last time you went this long without having a phone in your hand? And his answer was quick. He said, the day I bought it. So jurors are so used to constant entertainment, constant stimulation, that now they're sitting there with nothing, just staring at a judge and a prosecutor and a defense attorney. It's a skill to maintain their attention to the evidence and the testimony. So I would definitely say some tweaks in the system would be appropriate. And I can give you an example of what I think. I think at summation that each juror can ask in writing, so you don't have a free-for-all, can ask each side one question that they have about the evidence. Because after jury selection, voir dire, the jurors don't say a word. They don't say a word. Maybe they'll raise their hand. They have to go to the bathroom. Besides that, you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what questions they have. It's all guesswork. And I will tell you, it wastes a lot of time. There may be issues that you're addressing in summation that they either will never believe or they totally believe, but you're spending 15 minutes on it. So, Allison, it's a very, very good question. And I think, and I'm being sincere, I think a task force, even a national task force, should be set up to look again at how jurors are functioning. Back in the day, O.J. Simpson, the jurors were sequestered. What did that mean? They had to live together with court officers who made sure they didn't watch the coverage of O.J. They didn't read the newspapers or listen to the radio or anything. You know, they don't do that anymore for financial reasons. But now more than ever, something like that in a homicide case that's so important would be appropriate.
I think that answer should double as your closing argument. That was very good. I like the task force idea.
I mean, it could be. But I got a little closing argument.
Okay,
I'm going to do with my little one, or you would do your big one? Or
I'm going to do my big one, then you can do your little one, and then we'll
mine's
say
a little.
Okay, are you ready?
Go for it.
Okay. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments this week in what will undoubtedly be a landmark ruling on an issue so fundamental it should never require 9 of the most learned legal minds to pen an opinion on it. The legal issue, on paper, is whether biological men identifying as women have a civil right to compete in Title IX women's sports. The answer is easy. That's a no. They don't. Title IX was born in large part to protect against sex-based discrimination in federally funded educational institutions. Why? Because up to that point, it was women who were typically on the receiving end of discriminatory practices. Why then are we here? to answer the simplest of questions, not one as nebulous as what is the meaning of life, nor one as legitimately confounding, such as is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? The question truly before the Supreme Court is, what is a woman? Justice Alito lasered in, asking plaintiff's lawyer, quote, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman? The response, quote, we do not have a definition. Actually, we do. And we owe it all to biology, DNA, chromosomes, reproductive organs, the really important stuff to which we owe the existence of humankind. Ask any 5-year-old to define gender, and he or she will point to a fellow 5-year-old of the opposite sex and tell you that one is icky. There's a difference, and even they know it. It's science, you see. A woman is an adult human female, full stop. There is no surgical procedure that can change the science. You may change the appearance. You may even change the parts. Do a deep dive into the procedure by which a doctor creates a vagina in the space between a man's bladder and anus after lopping off his penis and testicles, if you have the stomach. And the end result? Still not a woman. These procedures remove healthy organs, repurpose tissue, and create structures that require lifelong medical intervention. There is no uterus created, no ovaries, no eggs, no reproductive function. It is body demolition, not gender affirmation. Which brings us to the real issue no one wants to talk about, gender dysphoria. For decades, it was correctly understood as a mental health condition. The best response was treatment. Today, we flip that on its head. We no longer treat the distress. We restructure reality around it. We don't help the patient adapt to the world. We demand the world adapt to the diagnosis. And somehow women, actual women, are told to sit down, shut up, and surrender their sports, their scholarships, their records, and their safety, all in the name of inclusivity that excludes them. The Supreme Court will not get this wrong because the definition of a woman is not a tomato-tomato situation. You can call a rooster a chicken all day long, but it's never going to lay an egg. Drop the mic. You're next.
That was.
Are you
that was
laughing?
No, it's fantastic. You could call the rooster.
Rooster and chicken all day long. Never going to lay an egg. You can borrow that, Arthur.
It is very true. Not along those exact lines, but covering this Timothy Busfield case, being the father of 3, and I want to make it clear, we don't know enough to know about guilt or innocence here, and in no way, shape, or form am I casting aspersions on the parents of these little boys. But unlike when we were kids, and I went to a high school where 20 years later, it came out that the coach was abusing boys, a lot of boys, horribly, horrifically, causing suicides. We're in a day and age where we now have the knowledge and we're not running from it and we're not fighting it. And as parents, you got to just have a keen eye. Look, anything can happen to any kid. I mean, we have to send them to school. We have to send them to camp and soccer practice and all that. And things can happen anywhere. But in this particular case, when you hear about the iPad went dead, you couldn't see where the kids were. I mean, I could just tell you, and I don't want to make this too personal, but my wife, Marianne Bertuna, like that iPad went dead, you would hear her speaking very loudly. I can't see him. Can't see my son anymore. I need to see this. Like, you need to be a little pushy. You need to be you need to intervene. Because there are sick people out there. I don't know if they're born that way, they develop that way. We could talk about that another day. But there are people who prey on those who can't defend themselves. And it will alter their life forever. Creates so many problems, insecurity, and the way they look at themselves, the way they look at life, depression, alcoholism, the statistics go on and on. So if there's anything that this Timothy case brings to light, it's just, and I'm speaking from personal experience here in terms of what I thought about today, preparing for this segment and being on this segment is, I'm going to keep an extra careful eye on my 4-year-old and my 9-year-old. I think my 19-year-old is in pretty decent shape, but the little ones, this should be an alert to all parents to just to be alert and to be very, very cognizant that children could be in harm's way and you don't even realize.
Excellent, Arthur. I love that message. I really do.
You know, it's scary. You know,
you
I
never
mean, this
c-
is
you never
we
cease
don't
to
know
amaze
what's
me.
going to happen with that case, but
Right.
the one part of that case that freaks me out a little bit is people who are on that set where this was allegedly took place, who really don't have any skin in the game on either side, said that the young boy here, the complaining witness, when he started the filming, he was this happy-go-lucky, vibrant, laughing kid. And at the end of all of these sessions, at the end, he was much more quiet, much more withdrawn, didn't seem to be very happy to be there. When you hear that about a little boy, and maybe because it's me, I'm surrounded with a little girl and a little boy in my household, that really brings up a red flag, like, hey, something is going on here. So just be alert for those telltale signs.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice from a great parent. So with that, we're going to bid everyone an adieu until the next
Jonna,
time.
it is always wonderful to be on with you, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. You are
Wonderful
the
to be on
consummate
with.
professional, and you keep it energetic and educational, and no one's ever going to be bored looking at you.
Well, I appreciate that. And don't forget, you and I are going to be I'm going to be doing your show after this show, but I do also want to thank, before we let you go, big thanks to Joseph Scott Morgan and to you, Arthur Aidala. You're just amazing. And in a few minutes, I'm going to be bebopping over onto your radio show. So everybody have a wonderful weekend. Keep your emails and great points and story suggestions coming, and we'll see you soon.